Welcome back, everyone. Today's topic is the common Muslim claim that the name Ahmad can be found in Isaiah 42:1. Before we look at this verse specifically, let me first lower your expectations of the level of Bible reading and interpretation to expect in this video. To do this, let's look at another very commonly cited prophecy of Muhammad in the Bible. He said, "The Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones with flaming fire at his right hand." Don't see Muhammad there? Put your Muslim Bible interpretation glasses on with me, and let's try again. Muhammad, came from a region that's close enough to Mecca and Medina and dawned from the same place. He shone, perhaps because he was shiny or bald, forth from Mount Paran, which is again close enough to Mecca and Medina. He came from the 10,000s of his soldiers with a sword or Quran in his right hand. And of course, when engaging in such venerable Muslim Bible reading, one has to be consistent and read other texts in this same cluster of verses, which are frequently referred to by scholars as the March from the South traditions, in the same way. Let me show you what I mean. Muhammad, came from Mecca, and the Holy One from Mecca. His, or Muhammad's, splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. That seems idolatrous. Now that you've reduced your effective intellect for this video, let's look at the popular claim that Muhammad, or Ahmad, is mentioned by name in Isaiah 42:1. Unlike when the Quran was written, Muslims can now read the Bible, though this happens infrequently at best, as videos like this demonstrate. In our modern day, we have numerous ancient manuscripts available that go way back before Islam. This makes claims about biblical corruption difficult for thinking people, since we can make comparisons before and after the Muslim claims of biblical corruption, and see that, in fact, Muslims have no basis for their claims. The Bible reads now what it did in the 7th century and long before. The Quran simply has no idea what the Bible is, constantly mistaking the Torah and Gospel for rabbinic legend and Christian folklore. So, what does this mean for Muslims who believe Muhammad is prophesied in the Bible? They can admit the Quran is wrong, or come up with some truly ridiculous claims, like the name Ahmad is mentioned in Isaiah 42. Here's a picture of the passage from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Under the image, I have the typed font, the Masoretic text, and a typical translation. The Vav in the Dead Sea Scrolls goes away because it's represented by an O-class vowel in the Masoretic text, and the final Hey is not needed because the MT clearly marks the Kal first-person prefix with an Aleph Segol. The Kaf looks different simply because it's in the final form when the Hey is dropped. Semantically, they are identical. Now let's look at the entire verse. "Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations." Don't see the name Ahmad? Perhaps it's because you don't have your Muslim Bible interpretation glasses on. So put them on with me, and let's try again. Ready? Okay. Let's look at the first part again. "Behold my servant, whom I uphold." With just a few minor changes to the Hebrew text, he appears. "Behold, my servant Ahmad." Thus, Surah 61:6 is fulfilled. And remember when Isa, son of Mary, said, "Sons of Israel, surely I am the messenger of God to you, confirming what was before me of the Torah, and bringing good news of a messenger who will come after me, whose name will be Ahmad, who is explicitly mentioned by name as the servant, as it is written in the prophet Isaiah." Actually, I don't remember when Jesus said that, and it would be really nice if the Quran's Isa would have at least called Muhammad a servant instead of a messenger in context, to match an important theme in Isaiah, namely the servant. It seems like the Quranic Isa doesn't know too much about Isaiah's prophecy. The New Testament provides a contrast in this regard, where the same Greek word for servant is used in Matthew 12 and the Septuagint of Isaiah 42. To add to the things the author of the Quran doesn't know, Matthew also knows Isaiah wrote it, since he mentions him by name, Muslims who make this argument about Isaiah 42:1 are claiming, indirectly, to know more about the Bible than their God does. And finally, note that Isaiah 42:1 says, "I have put my spirit upon him," that is, the servant. It's interesting that in the Quran, the spirit of Allah is connected most directly to Isa and not Muhammad. Now, if you're curious, let's remove those special glasses so we can actually see the changes to the Hebrew text that Muslims are proposing. The first person prefix has to be changed to an A-class vowel. The tav has to be changed to a chet. The vav discarded or changed from an O-class to an A-class vowel. The final hey is discarded, even though it frequently provides confirmation of the first person prefix in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The kaf is assumed to be the final form since the hey is dropped, at which point it can appear similar to the dalet and therefore must be a dalet. And finally, the bet and vav are discarded. Note that Muslims cannot produce a single manuscript to argue for these changes. All they can do is assert that the text doesn't say what it does, and further assert that since it doesn't say what it does, it must say Ahmad. This two-stage argument puts the ignorant icing on the incoherent cake. I've also included the Septuagint for you. It uses a form of the verb antilambano, which is a perfectly straightforward translation of the Hebrew. This corruption of the name Ahmad in Isaiah 42:1 must have been extremely early and widespread, affecting numerous Hebrew and Greek manuscripts from nearly a millennium before the Quran, and even earlier. But I'll admit, once you see Ahmad in Isaiah 42, you can't unsee it. In fact, I'm starting to see prophecies of Muhammad all over the place in Isaiah, using very similar and equally sound linguistic analysis. Let's start with the first word of Isaiah 42:1, behold, and use that as a link to connect to our next Ahmad passage. Behold, you are nothing, and your work is less than nothing. Let's fix this corrupted text. We can leave the aleph as is. It even has an A-class vowel to get us started. That's great. That pesky tav needs some modification, as well as a new vowel. The mem is right where we need it, and if it's one thing mems like, it's a good old dalet, and just like that, Ahmad appears. Behold, Ahmad is nothing, and your work is less than nothing. An abomination is he who chooses you. Wow, I actually don't disagree with this, ironically. Keep those Muslim interpretation glasses on and let's do another. Tell us what is to come hereafter. Again, let's correct the corrupted text. No idea what that inseparable preposition lamed is doing, so let's line that out. We can keep the aleph and chet. How fortuitous. Just make the vav an A-class vowel and notice the resh, which looks strangely like a dalet. Boom, Ahmad. Tell us what is to come, Ahmad, that we may know that you, not sure why that's plural, are gods. A god? Now that actually doesn't make any sense, but I know that Ahmad is in there, so there must be more corruption here than I originally thought. So let's move on and leave this for further study. Another one from Isaiah 42. They are turned back and utterly put to shame who trust in carved idols, who say to metal images, you are our gods. Now we just apply the same methodology that we did a couple of verses ago, and Ahmad. They are turned back and utterly put to shame who trust in carved idols, who say to metal images, Ahmad. Hey, this reminds me of the idolatry enshrined in the Kaaba. I have to admit, this is working better than I expected overall. Let's do one more. I am the Lord, I have called you in righteousness. Notice the part translated, I have called you. No idea what that kof and resh are doing. They clearly don't belong. That gives us an aleph and tav. We're off to an excellent start because the tav, as we've seen, has a tendency to mutate into a chet, as it does here. The yod is close to a mem on a Hebrew keyboard, which is an easy typo for those ancient scribes to make, so let's amend that to a mem. And finally, there's that final kaf, which looks like a dalet. Oh yeah, Ahmad. I am the Lord, Ahmad. And now we come full circle. We started off with a couple prophecies of Muhammad that called him God, and we're finishing with another. It would be miraculous if it wasn't so stupid. It's hard to have little else than contempt for these pathetic attempts to find Muhammad in the Bible. As dumb as this all is, it demonstrates something very plainly. Muslims are stooping very, very low as they attempt to prove the Quran true. And if stooping that low is what's required to prop up your book, then you don't have much of a book, do you? Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.